Hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of my French campaign. Unfortunately, I had a microphone issue while I was recording this, so none of the original commentary was recorded, which means I have to go back and watch the videos and then comment on them, which is what I'm doing now. And for some reason... Oh, there we go. I'm just making the preview bigger. Actually didn't know how to do that until just now. So that's stupid. But anyway, back to the video. I'm just sending down my fleet here. I did it this turn because I wanted to see if they'd find anything, but nothing really important. So right now I was kind of confused about why I was lagging. I figured it wasn't just that message. Then I realized I still had the fleet selected, so the pathing was, calculating all the way from the Americas to Europe. So once I deselected that, the game ran smoothly again. And you can see next turn we're going to finish off that Austrian army. And then we'll be able to maybe use some troops from Paris and unite them with the army in Hanover to attack the Austrians. But, we have to decide between doing that or sailing them around and attacking them in West Prussia, which is not as well defended. And, in part it depends on what Poland does, because Poland is at war with Austria. So, whether or not they attack will determine, actually, what the best option for us is. I was just looking at the objectives there to show that there's a difference between militarily defeating Austria and capturing territories. And in the long run, it's better that we capture territories, because that's the ultimate objective. It's not just to defeat the armies. And since territories are the most important thing, it might be better to attack in the east and bypass the Austrian armies, and then maybe try to get them to accept a peace treaty or something, because defeating their armies really won't get me anything in the long term. So this fleet, I think, would be capable of transporting the army over here, but it's not a very diverse fleet. It has only a few different types of ships. So if the Austrians have something better, it could, kill the army that's being transported. So right now what I'm doing is figuring out which force I should take out of Paris and send on a campaign against Austria, because I don't want to take all of the units, because that would leave Paris undefended, but I need enough to reinforce the armies on the frontier, or the front, I mean. So we have 9 units in that force in Hanover, so I figure a few more will make it, a good amount in total. And I think I'm going to send them over. Do I do that? Yeah. We're going to put them in the port. And if you remember, there was that one unit that was already in there just for defensive purposes against, raids. So I'll have to leave one unit there. And you can see I have 2 different types of militia type infantry, and there are a few differences you can see here. So I'm ultimately going to decide to leave, I think, I really can't tell, but I think it's the less powerful one, because it's its importance is really just in occupying the port. Doesn't have to do any combat. So we'll leave those guys there. And I don't know why the pathing is doing that, but that fixed it.
Prêt à recevoir vos ordres?
We're going to make a good amount of money next turn, but we basically spent all we have now. So I ended the turn, and we have a new technology, as you can see. And again, successful mission of this guy in Iceland. So we have a lot of schools, and they're all, researching whatever, but I have to get back to saving up some money to build new buildings in Paris so that I can unlock those new technologies for research. And this is actually what happened during the end turn. I didn't see this at the time, but Austria conquered my ally, which means Alsace-Lorraine is now, right next to an Austrian army. So I'm going to need to send some troops there to make sure the Austrians don't take that region from me. And that army there, the Austrian army, just fought a battle, it looks like. So they might not be at full strength, but I can't tell until I get a rake in there. Anyway, we should kill the rest of them, and I'll just auto-resolve that. Good. Wow, there really aren't any defenses there. I mean, any troops stationed there. We do have fortifications for the city, though, so if we do have to fight a battle in Alsace-Lorraine, if they siege us, we'll be able to defend moderately well, I guess, but I don't think they'll be ready until they replenish their troops. Anyway, I got rid of that guy, and just put a better minister in place. Now I'm going to sail my fleet down to the Bahamas. And there aren't many pirates defending, so I think it'll be an easy battle. Actually, I know it will be because I've done this already, but for the sake of making the video, we'll just pretend like we don't really know what's happening. Anyway, I'd like another general, because I really only have two, one in each theater, and that's not enough. Because generals are very important for fighting battles, especially larger ones, when morale can really turn suddenly, and then, if a few units start routing at a time, everyone else is prone to do so. And having a general around increases the morale of troops. And I'd also like some more cavalry, because it seems like most of my armies are just overly infantry based, and you give up mobility when you don't have sufficient amounts of cavalry. So I'll train those units and send the ones in Paris over to defend Alsace-Lorraine. There are a lot of troops I can choose from, but I think there's I could benefit from kind of standardizing the units that I choose to train, just because it means I can generalize my expectations more, rather than having to take into account the different statistics of every regiment if I have a varied force. But then again, it makes every unit vulnerable in the exact same way. But, you know, whatever. So now, I'm disembarking the soldiers that I took from Paris, and I'm going to march them down to defend. The other force there doesn't have much movement points left, doesn't have many movement points left, so I'm just going to keep them separated, and then they can join together in the defense if necessary. And here I was just checking on Syria, still controlled by rebels. And we can see here the Austrian force has a lot of different types of units, and most of them have a good amount of experience. A lot of the infantry are elite units, so at full strength, this army, you know, would be quite a challenge for a less elite force of similar size. Anyway, I'm going to redirect this rake, and I thought about trying to assassinate their general, but the chances of that were very low, so I just decided to have him infiltrate the army instead. And now we can see that this army really is not at full strength. The units are mostly really depleted, so I think the Austrians will have to replenish those units before they try to attack me, especially once I get my units in position to defend. So I might have gotten a little bit lucky here. I didn't have defenses in place, but the Austrians didn't have couldn't keep up the offensive tempo to attack when I wasn't able to defend. Anyway, I'm going to move one rake down, and the other one can go see what other defenses the Austrians have. But you notice this Polish army here that just marched over from, it looks like, Warsaw, looking to take an Austrian region. So we'll have to see if that redirects any Austrian troops and opens up possible attacks for us. So I can't see the troop numbers anymore, so I am going to take the rake. What do? I think I take the rake out and put him back in. That lets me see, yep. Which is kind of stupid, but it lets me see how many troops the Austrians have. And I was hoping this guy would be, that rake up there in Iceland would be really good by now, because he's been hiding and spying on the enemy for quite a while. But he's not that special. Anyway, we have a new government, and I was hoping that wouldn't happen because a lot of the ministers in the past government were pretty good, and now it's like in most positions we have unqualified people again. So I tried to kick that guy out, but you can only replace one a turn, and yeah, I don't have the powers of an absolute monarchy. Just going through the alerts right now. So I've recruited the general here, and he is pretty unremarkable, but at least he's young, and hopefully he'll gain some traits in this war. So we'll bring the troops over. I just don't really like leaving my movements until the end of the turn, because it seems like I get careless that way, I guess. You know, by then it's too late to change anything about the troop movements if I made a mistake or something like that. So oftentimes if I'm at war, or you know, it's just an important troop movement, I'll move them during the turn. And now here I was thinking about actually going to siege the Austrians instead of defending my own land, because it looks like the Austrians won't be ready to attack me, but I decide to go ahead and defend, and then you know, we can join forces and attack. But here we can see my allies actually have a sizable force, especially for a minor country, and they're looking to attack the Austrians, which is kind of unusual. It's pretty rare to see minors launch any significant attacks against the major nations, but Austria is fighting on two fronts, and yeah, we just took this. But Austria is fighting on two fronts, and I guess the situation favored an attack from my ally. So we'll have to see what happens there. Anyway, you know, easy victory here against the pirates, as expected. But now I'm gonna have to keep the army there for a while, or else everyone will get angry. And I think it would be a good idea if I built some defenses around Paris, just because Paris is such an important city that, you know, I'd really be set back in this campaign if I lost it, even just for a few turns. So having defenses there will just give me a little buffer against any surprise attack, and you can see most major cities do have fortifications. I'm just checking out a few to show you. But yeah, so I think Paris definitely deserves to have some by this stage in the game. And we'll have to repair that repression building, I called it, so that the people will be pacified when I move my troops on to the next pirate stronghold. I might have to exempt them from taxation for a little while, but you know, the important thing is keeping the region for now, and then eventually they'll calm down and I can tax them, and you know, it'll be like nothing changed for them. So I guess the next stop will be Jamaica, and from there we can decide which islands to take. So I ended the turn. And the Austrians moved a force into Hanover. So I'm going to decide that the troops I have in Hanover should stay there, just as a defensive measure, until there really isn't a threat of any Austrian attack, and it's clear the Austrians still do have some men to throw at me. So I'm just going to put them in there for now. We can deal with the Austrians later. I mean, the Austrians up there later. So I'm going to do the same thing with the rake again. And the Austrians have not replenished their troops yet. So it looks like it's a good time to siege them. I'm going to just take this rake out and see if the Austrians have any troops on the way to reinforce their army. But it doesn't look like they have anything significant marching through neutral Bavaria here. And the Austrian army that we see on the left of the screen actually is in a pretty difficult position. I think for reinforcement purposes, it's totally cut off from the rest of the Austrian lands. And well, it's clear that Austria has military access through Bavaria. It's a pretty long march, maybe 2 turns just to get to the westernmost army. And when you're being attacked by other countries, you often can't spare the men to reinforce your position so far away from the rest of your cities. So we're going to siege them, not assault the fortress yet. But we can bring in our other forces and eventually, gather our strength so that we're stronger than the defending Austrians. So I'm going to bring over those 6 units that were just trained. And we can even train some more now. It's just with this mod, everything is more expensive, so I have to be careful about what I train. And I think having some mobile artillery would serve me well, because right now I only have fixed artillery, and what you can do with that is really limited. So I'm training some more artillery, and that will join my army soon. And meanwhile, you can actually see, look, Poland took a region from the Austrians, kind of splitting the main land territory of Austria into 2, and then with that territory that Austria gained by conquering my ally to the east of France, Austria is really split into 3 different regions. And it's going to make it difficult for the Austrians to move their troops around well and put armies where they need to be. So that's really helpful for me, actually, because I can kind of divide and conquer, attack wherever they're weak, and troop movement across the different territories is going to be, I can hope that the Poles will pick off any armies that try walking through their new territory. But here, if I remove my soldiers, the people get angry. But if I exempt them from tax, they're really a lot less angry, I guess. And maybe next turn they won't be angry at all. So we're gonna load up the men, and yeah, you can see it's only -1. And the resistance to occupation thing, or whatever it says, I can't read it, will diminish every turn, gradually. So I think we'll be fine not having any troops here. Eventually I can resume taxing them, and it won't be a big deal. So here, this is another region without a lot of defenses. So I'm going to land my troops, and then next turn we can attack them and conquer Jamaica. And what we're doing right now, if you remember, is basically just cleaning up, well, what we've been doing in the Bahamas, and what we're going to do in Jamaica is just cleaning up the regions that were, I guess, left to the pirates when early in this campaign we conquered Britain. So what happens when a nation's capital and all of the other regions in the same theater are conquered is I can intercept here, is that the other territories and other theaters turn into rebels or pirates, whatever the rebelling faction would be. And I am going to decide to attack here, so that will be in the next video, and again I'll have to narrate over that. Kind of annoying. But I hope you enjoyed this, and I'll try to upload the next one soon.